Part 34. I feel a little guilty towards Bai Xuelan for my misunderstanding. Bai Xuelan asked Adjutant Sun to do a few other things, so Adjutant Sun agreed and left. Bai Xuelan looked at the dozen or so documents that had to be signed in person, and approved the reply. After taking a break, remembering that Xuan Huaifeng had been wandering around the garden for a long time, he went to the back. Unexpectedly, after looking around, there was no sign of Xuan Huaifeng at all. And I asked a few people I met on the road. In Xuan Huaifeng's room, no one was seen. Bai Xuelan heard Xuan Huaifeng say that he was going to practice guns today. Since he was practicing guns, he should find himself to get the bullets, otherwise only the guard leader had some bullets. So he found Song Ren, who the newly appointed guard leader who was transferred from the east, came to ask him. Song Ren said, "Chief, I haven't said a single word with Adjutant Xuan yet." The housekeeper also came to report, "I have searched the dining room, small study, and side hall, but I can't see Adjutant Xuan. I also asked the servant, all said that they didn't see Adjutant Xuan going out." Seeing Bai Xuelan's sullen face, the housekeeper tried to comfort him. "Chief, please relax. Such a big living person will never disappear in the mansion. I think it's mostly Adjutant Xuan who is so quiet, so he hid in a place we couldn't think of for a while and went to relax. I'll see you when we eat for a while. People can't stop eating, right?" Bai Xuelan thought rationally. But emotionally, he was extremely anxious. I didn't know where Xuan Huaifeng was, so I felt extremely flustered and uncomfortable, and I thought a lot. First, I offended too many people. Although I was in the mansion, there was no guarantee that there were spies sent by the enemy. Knowing that Huaifeng is his heart and soul, what happened to Huaifeng is really worse than stabbing himself with a knife. The second is that Huaifeng gave up his heart, and his heart was too soft. He still has some lumps in his heart, and he must also feel guilty for Lin Qijun. If Lin Qijun learns from himself, comes up with a trick, or puts on a pitiful face, I am afraid that Huaifeng will be shaken again. But no matter what, with so many guards and servants staying in the mansion, he can't leave the mansion without a sound. If you are in the mansion, why don't you see anyone? There is another possibility, that is, Huaifeng playing with him and deliberately hiding it. But why is he being rude? Bai Xuelan half squinted his eyes, sat on the sofa. His knuckles rattled. He never imagined what he had done to make Huaifeng dissatisfied. Last night was really intense. It might make him uncomfortable, but he wanted to get angry. It should be posted when we meet in the morning. Why wait until now to make a disappearance record? Most of the others, as anxious as he was, have already been rummaging around in the mansion. But Bai Xuelan did not. He is good at analysis and planning. For example, if a hunter wants to catch a wild leopard who wants to catch a wild leopard, he is in a hurry. He first looks at the terrain, and then analyzes the leopard's habitual temperament. Even the paths he often travels and the places he loves to prey are all ready, in order to make the next trap. Bai Xuelan insisted that he was locked up, and that today's affairs, from the time of separation from Huaifeng in the morning, to the present moment, went through every minute and every second in his mind. My heart moved violently. He quickly called the housekeeper back and asked him, "You just went to the cashier to withdraw money. Did you meet Adjutant Xuan on the way?" The housekeeper said, "No. Whoever told this to his ears? Or the servant saw Adjutant Sun preparing a car to Pai Yunfei's house and chewing his tongue." The housekeeper thought for a while, then laughed and said, "The servant can't guarantee it. But now these two accountants don't talk nonsense. Besides, Adjutant Xuan rarely goes to the other side of the account." Chief, making a fool of oneself, confused thoughts may not be about Boss Pai, or where Adjutant Xuan is watching. The mansion has a big garden and a lot of houses. I wonder where he found an old book, and he was fascinated by it. A bitter smile appeared in Bai Xuelan's heart. And sighed, do you think so? Okay, I just don't understand this person. It really kills me. Otherwise, Huaifeng overheard it through the wall. No evidence is needed. Anyway, at this moment, he was sure that Huaifeng knew about sending money to Bai Yunfei, so he played a bit of a temper. Don't ask, he must be hiding in a quiet place, thinking about how to cut himself off. Huaifeng is like a beloved bead in his palm that he has been rubbing and admiring for many years. The size, shape, and weight, which correspond to the light emitted at different times, and the incomparably chaste, sensitive and fragile texture are all clear. After thinking about it clearly, Bai Xuelan couldn't do the earth-shattering search of the mansion. So he stood up and left the study, and walked slowly to the back garden. He knew that Huaifeng felt this kind of emotional anger, and no one wanted to see it. It was always easy to find when he stayed in the house, and most of the time he chose to hide in the huge back garden. Bai Xuelan looked like he was walking, deliberately picking a remote path, looking at it with sharp eyes as he walked. After walking for half an hour, I picked another path and went straight on. The shadows gradually thickened, covering most of the sun shining above my head. It was a very unobtrusive path. Going straight to the back of the rockery, a dark and shady hole was dug under the rock, the size of which only one person could enter. Bai Xuelan didn't know why, but intuition that this was the place Xuan Huaifeng liked to pick. He leaned in, touched the cold and rugged stone wall, and walked in step by step. This is the state of mind under Xuan Huaifeng's eyes, which makes Bai Xuelan feel annoyed for no reason. If he wants to show his temper, there is no way to use it. Are you distressed? Annoyingly, he was really distressed. Thinking about it again, when he was imprisoned in the mansion at first, this person didn't ask any questions. First of all, he poured himself a belly of smoke and soil water, and almost lost his life. It's really disgusting that you don't care for your body and skin like this. Just for the sake of the heavenly commander. Mrs. Xuan, she should be taught a lesson. In this way, the old hatred was turned over, and the light in Bai Xuelan's eyes instantly became frightening. In the small, semi-closed hole, there is a thin breath. Bai Xuelan stood for a while, adjusting to the darkness inside, and slowly saw a figure sitting in the corner, with his back against the wall. With one arm leaning on a knee-high stone pier, resting on his head, and seeing someone coming in, he didn't care at all. Not moving. Hey, you actually fell asleep. In an instant. The heart seemed annoyed, resentful, joyful, resentful, as if it was a straight string that could break the throat. And the shallow and even breathing in the air turned into an incredible softness around the fingers. Bai Xuelan held his breath unconsciously, tiptoed to the outline, and touched his hands little by little. I thought to myself, he was exhausted last night, and he got up early again today. No wonder he fell asleep. The fingertips touched the soft skin, but felt a little hot. Bai Xuelan took a breath and shook him gently. Get up quickly. Don't look at the place if you want to sleep. Bai Xuelan became anxious, lifted his sleeves up, and hugged him horizontally. The entrance of the cave was not very big, and Bai Xuelan was tall and shoulder-width apart, and it was even more inconvenient to hold a person. Fearing that Xuan Huaifeng's limelight collided with the invisible protruding stone horn, Bai Xuelan could only walk sideways, shrinking his stomach, and moved 10 steps against the stone wall. Out of the hole, there was a burning pain in the back of the shoulder. When I walked to the Juku bridge, it happened that a person stepped over the bridge. The housekeeper was also looking for Xuan Huaifeng. When the housekeeper saw it, he seemed relieved. He trotted over and asked, "Have you found it?" "It's a great thing." But the chief grew up walking around the garden with his adjutant in his arms during the day. After all, it was a bit of an eye-opener. And it was not easy to talk about people at the moment. He just looked at it with his eyes and said nothing. Bai Xuelan said. He was looking at the scenery in the garden. He was probably tired and fell asleep while sitting on the ice stone. He has a fever. You should call the doctor. The housekeeper hurriedly went to do it. Bai Xuelan carried Xuan Huaifeng straight back to his room, put it on the bed, sat and watched for a while. Then the doctor came to help Xuan Huaifeng with a brief examination. Wiped his sweat and said with a smile, "Your housekeeper urged me to do so. Hundreds of thousands of fires are in a hurry, and I still think, why is it serious? You can rest assured that the patient has only a small fever, and it will be fine to get an injection. After all, he is young and has a good foundation." Xuan Huaifeng was injected with an injection. Bai Xuelan said lightly to the doctor, "There is another small matter, please take a look." He took off his shirt and let the doctor look at his shoulders. Doctor said, "Excuse me for exaggerating. You are so sympathetic to your subordinates. You are so bruised, why do you get up first? Although it is a skin injury, if it is infected, it is not a joke." The medicine box was opened, and alcohol was used to disinfect the broken skin, and then the medicine was applied. Seeing that Bai Xuelan didn't frown, as if nothing was happening, he couldn't help admiring. "Chief, you are really tough." Bai Xuelan felt amused. "This is also called hard gas? It's just a scratch. Is it comparable to a gunshot wound?" "Then I haven't said a word." The doctor was even more impressed. When the medical thing was over, Bai Xuelan asked someone to send the doctor out, and ordered the messenger to bring refreshments to the room, so he picked up a copy of 3 Words from the cabinet, sat on the chair, and drank tea leisurely. Turn page by page. Turning to the 80 or so pages, out of the corner of his eyes, he suddenly caught a glimpse of the figure on the bed moving faintly. Bai Xuelan just pretended not to see it. Still drinking tea and reading a book, just sat down and didn't leave. After turning more than 30 pages, he saw Xuan Huaifeng sitting up from the bed. Bai Xuelan put down the book and said with a smile, "When did you wake up? Is it better?" Xuan Huaifeng's long black eyelashes drooped down, and without looking directly at him, he silently got out of bed and bent over to put on his shoes. Bai Xuelan asked, "You got up just now, and are you in a hurry to go?" Xuan Huaifeng didn't intend to talk to him. But when he thought about it, he felt that this kind of Cold War only made it seem that there was something between them, and it was even more selfish, be humiliated. The best way is to do business on a regular basis from now on. When he is an adjutant, just treat him as a boss. If there is a chance to resign in the future, he will leave without looking back. Hearing Bai Xuelan's question, he replied calmly without a trace of expression on his face, "It's past noon. My subordinates should go to handle today's official business." Bai Xuelan almost laughed in his stomach. Knowing that he was actually eating Pai Yunfei's vinegar, he was quite happy. But this Bai Xuelan is very hateful. So, he pretended not to know anything on his face. He also acted like a businessman and said, "That's not urgent." "Just so. I have an important official business here to discuss with you. Sit down and speak." Xuan Huaifeng felt that he was a liar, so he refused to sit, standing, and asked, "What is the most important business?" Bai Xuelan looked up at him. "Recently, heroin has become popular in the city. You have heard of this, is it?" When Xuan Huaifeng was studying in the UK, he had heard of the drug heroin. He had a foreign classmate who was also a decent young man. How could there be such a harmful thing? Heroin is more harmful than opium. This is not good. It must be investigated. Once he got serious, his guarded heart was slack, so he sat down and asked, "Where did you get the news from? The big smoke shop in the city has the courage to sell this?" Bai Xuelan said, I got the news from Bai Yunfei last night. Xuan Huaifeng was startled. Bai Yunfei and this person were not romantic in the room, but they went to discuss official business, which was something he had never thought about. Hearing the 3 words, Bai Yunfei, was a bit piercing after all. Xuan Huaifeng's face was silent, and he said, could it be that Bai Yunfei has something wrong with this? Bai Xuelan said, he is a man like philodendron amaranth. Yes, it looks bright on the outside, but it's hard to describe the pain inside. After his family fell, he brought a younger sister to live with his uncle. But his uncle and aunt were a pair of big smokers. They used to be a big family. Burning cigarettes is indispensable, and life is very bad. Bai Yunfei spends most of the money he sings every month on buying cigarettes and soil, and the remaining few are for his sister to eat and read. So, if he needs more money, or asks for a new outfit, he always has to go to someone else's house. Xuan Huaifeng was the first to hear about Bai Yunfei's family, and was slightly surprised. After a while, his voice was not as hard as before, and he sighed and said, I never knew. Bai Xuelan smiled and said, you don't watch dramas, and you don't play roles, so what do you know? You tell me. The reason why I talked about heroin with Bai Yunfei was because his unsatisfactory uncle, who was not able to eat a lot of cigarettes, was planted in heroin again. This thing is deadly medicinal. And so is the money. In order to buy it, even Bai Yunfei's the gold watch on his hand was peeled off and sent to the pawnshop. I looked at him so pitiful. So I got up this morning and thought about it, and asked Adjutant's son to send another $2,000 over there. I planned to meet you when I saw you. What you said. I didn't see you coming after waiting for a long time. However, I don't think you would object. When this came, he even beat him. And the sour fire in Xuan Huaifeng's heart was blown away in an instant. Xuan Huaifeng knew that he had misunderstood Bai Xuelan, and felt ashamed. He was fortunate that he didn't take this as an excuse to start a war. With a slightly blushing face, he asked, why do I object? It's not my money. You love to give 220,000 to others. So feel free to give it away. Bai Xuelan took the opportunity to stand up, walked around behind him, put both hands on his shoulders, and said, last time you Luha came, didn't you also persuade me not to spend money indiscriminately? Why do I respect your opinion now? Are you mad at me for saying this kind of irony? As he said that, he lowered his head and rubbed against Xuan Huaifeng's face. Xuan Huaifeng blocked it with his hand, and the lips fell on the back of his hand, itching hotly. He couldn't shrink his hand. If he did, Bai Xuelan would kiss his face, so he had to let Bai Xuelan kiss the back of his hand like a wolf. Xuan Huaifeng endured for a while, then decided to pick out the other thorn in his heart, and said with a straight face, are you talking nonsense with anyone about the things between us? Bai Xuelan immediately knew that his anger, it turned out to be overheard outside the study. If you listened to outsiders chewing their tongues and knew about giving Bai Yunfei money, it would be fine. How could he even get into a few gossips with Adjutant's son? Can't help but scold yourself for being careless. Xuan Huaifeng's face is thin, and his heart is dead, and he will never make such a mistake in words again. Bai Xuelan hurriedly admitted his mistake and said, it's definitely my fault. I swear to you, if I miss a word of things between us in the future, I'll be struck by lightning and split the body into 5 horses. He raised 2 fingers. Xuan Huaifeng was dumbfounded by him. He turned around, slapped 2 of his fingers away, and said with a sullen face, do you believe in the teachings of foreigners? You don't need to vein this useless shot. You have promised not to be with anyone else anymore. Mention it. I'll just watch the aftermath. Bai Xuelan was a little surprised to see him let it go like this. In addition to being happy, he hugged Xuan Huaifeng, kissed him a few times on his face and lips, and asked for a tongue kiss. It was daylight and the window was open again. Xuan Huaifeng couldn't take it anymore, so he pushed him away angrily and said, "When is this? You do such a good thing without looking at the sun." Bai Xuelan Xia laughing, "Okay. I'll endure it until the night, you can't ruin my good deeds." How could Xuan Huaifeng accept his malicious words? To pretend said to him, "I originally said that I would practice guns today, but I don't know where to go to get some bullets." Like a woodpecker, Bai Xuelan gave him a kiss and murmured, "The bullets are nothing but a trifle. Just say how much you want. But it's only the same. You have to eat with me before you go." Xuan Huaifeng looked at the clock on the wall. And it was already lunchtime, my belly was also hungry. So, I called the kitchen to prepare meals. The two sat in the room and had a harmonious lunch. After a short break after the meal, Bai Xuelan called a servant to call Song Ren and bring some bullets for Adjutant Xuan to practice his gun. After a while, Song Ren came over. As soon as he entered the door, he put the 4 boxes of bullets stacked in both hands on the table first, stood upright, raised his head and saluted, and shouted in his voice, "Hello, Chief, Adjutant Xuan." "Good." The loud voice made Xuan Huaifeng jump, and the sip of pu'er tea he just drank almost went to the trachea. Seeing that Bai Xuelan frowned frequently and stroked his throat, and because of the presence of unfamiliar people, he was afraid of losing his demeanor, so he endured a cough, and his face turned back and said, "It's not a big deal, don't worry. This is Song Ren, who he transferred from Shandong. He just arrived yesterday. I'm calling him the head guard here. Shandong people are loud and do things. You have to be patient." Xuan Huaifeng finally took a breath and looked up. The man in front of him was taller than ordinary people, with a big skeleton and broad shoulders. The spear was hanging on his back, which was just the right size. The facial features on his face are a bit ugly, but his eyes are very bright, which brings out a heroic spirit. Cannot help nodding. He knew that Bai Xuelan's family had a strong military presence in the east, and Shandong was the foundation. If he said he was transferred from Shandong, it was most likely a soldier used by Bai Xuelan's uncle who was the commander-in-chief, so he asked, "I have been there." "Battlefield?" Bai Xuelan smiled. "What's more? Along with the brothers he brought over this time, they were all crawling from the dead." He understated it, but Xuan Huaifeng paid attention. Those smoke and soil drug dealers were blocked by Bai Xuelan, and they were staring like black eyes outside the mansion, eager to tear Bai Xuelan apart. Now that Bai Xuelan has transferred these people, it can be seen that he understands that his situation is extremely dangerous. Only in this way, the spirit that is biased towards Tiger Mountain is even more respectable. To compare again, the person I am entangled with is just a little bit of personal love, a bit of a dodgy unwillingness. It is really insignificant. As for the unreasonable willfulness of the earlier idea, it is even more hateful. Xuan Huaifeng has always treated others leniently and treated himself strictly. Recalling his own evil deeds, and suddenly became more and more ashamed of Bai Xuelan. While thinking about it, I told the new guard leader Song Ren a few words. Nothing more than to protect the chief and be careful. Bai Xuelan suddenly said from the side, "Since we've met, there will be many opportunities to get acquainted later." Song Ren. Adjutant Xuan wants to practice spears. You should ask someone to prepare some new targets. Don't use the old ones. Song Ren snapped again. The ground stood at attention and saluted. Just about to speak, Bai Xuelan waved his hand, "Come on. This is not the army, you don't have to use this earth-shattering thing. In the future, these rules can be avoided. And don't make us nervous all day long." Song Ren nodded and said, "Understood." This time, he didn't salute again, picked up a few boxes of bullets on the table again, and walked away full of energy. As soon as Song Ren left, Bai Xuelan came over, glanced at him with vigor, and asked, "How can I just say a few words to a man I just met with this expression?" Xuan Huaifeng was startled. "What this and that expression?" Bai Xuelan half smiled, asked him, "You look at others, you are so fascinated, you still ask me?" Xuan Huaifeng said, "I'm talking to him, I don't look at him." "Do I look at you?" "Maybe I was thinking about something just now, and I was stunned for a while." Bai Xuelan then asked, "Thinking about something? What are you thinking about?" Although I feel a little guilty towards Bai Xuelan, I really can't say it face to face like this. Especially when Bai Xuelan broke the casserole without letting go and asked to the end, it was difficult for anyone to speak. Xuan Huaifeng said, "I'm just thinking. Since there are these new recruits, should you transfer the guards from the mansion to another department?" Bai Xuelan said, "I spent a lot of time on them. The few banknotes are already cooked. And it is a pity to let them go. Although they are kept, it is not that they cannot afford to keep them. In the end, they are not very bad, but they are less bloody and lack a little murderousness. Now let's change a batch of murderous ones, things are much more interesting." With a faint smile, his eyes suddenly shone a little fiercely. Xuan Huaifeng's heart froze when he saw it. In an instant, the stinging light faded away, and it was still the handsome man with a calm smile.